Friends, in today's video, we are going to share with you an incredible story where a dog somehow ends up with a newborn baby. But the real question is, did the dog actually give birth to the baby? Or is there something else behind this strange event? As the news spreads through the entire village, what do the villagers do? What happens to the dog? And what is the real mystery behind this incident? To find out everything, stay tuned till the end of this video. And if you enjoy the video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and click the bell icon for notifications. Let's dive right in. In a tranquil village surrounded by lush green mountains, where the bond between nature and people is unbreakable, begins a love story. One between Zab, a beautiful young woman, and Amin, a humble man. Zab's eyes held a unique, captivating glow, and her smile radiated warmth, just like the first rays of the morning sun. However, her beauty wasn't just external. There was depth to her character as well. Though many young men in the village admired her, her heart belonged only to Amin. Amin, despite being a simple man, led an honest and hard-working life. The villagers respected him not just for his good looks, but more so for his generous heart and selfless nature. Every morning, long before dawn, Amin would rise, tending to his animals and working diligently in his fields. There was something almost spiritual in the way he worked, as if every chore brought him closer to fulfillment. By his side was his loyal dog, Rani, who wasn't just a pet, but also a guardian to his livestock. Together, they made a perfect pair. Amin, the hard-working farmer, and Rani, the ever-vigilant protector. Zab often visited Amin, drawn by the sincerity and tireless efforts he put into his work. She would spend time with him, whether it was collecting eggs, tending to the farm, or playing with Rani. Every moment they shared felt warm and intimate. They would often sit under the mango tree, talking about their dreams for the future. Zab dreamed of seeing the world beyond her village, while Amin's hopes were rooted in building a better life for his family. But not everyone in the village shared their happiness. Fariz, a young man from a wealthy family, had other plans. His pride and ambition were his defining traits, and he had an undeniable interest in Zab. However, he could not come to terms with the fact that she had chosen Amin over him. Fariz's jealousy brooded over time, and he was determined to separate the couple, even if it meant resorting to cruel tactics. One bright morning, like any other, Amin rose early to take care of his chores. However, something unusual happened that day. Rani, his dog, began to bark restlessly, more agitated than ever before. Amin, initially dismissing it as a desire for play, soon realized that there was something more to her behavior. When he went to check on her, he was shocked to find a newborn baby lying beside her. The infant, still covered in the remnants of birth, was fragile and helpless. Amin's mind raced in confusion. How could this happen? What was the baby doing? Here in the care of Rani, he quickly wrapped the baby in cloth and rushed to the village to seek help. As he arrived at the village square, carrying the baby, the villagers were taken aback. They were skeptical of his story, their faces filled with disbelief. Fariz, ever opportunistic, saw this as the perfect chance to undermine Amin. With a dramatic flair, Fariz began to spread a vicious rumor. He accused Amin of an unspeakable act, claiming that the baby was a result of Amin's unnatural relationship with his dog. The villagers, already quick to judge, began whispering and casting suspicious glances at Amin. The tension was palpable, and soon, Fariz's lies had completely engulfed the village in gossip. Zab, who had been unaware of the situation, soon arrived to find the entire village in an uproar. Hearing the slander against Amin, her heart broke. She knew him well enough to understand that he was incapable of the accusations being thrown at him, but no one seemed to listen. The entire village was consumed by the lie, and Zab felt powerless to stop it. Despite the growing hostility, Zab stood by Amin, determined to find the truth. Her love for him and her faith in his goodness were unwavering. However, deep inside, She feared the extent of the damage Fariz's scheming had done to the community's trust in Amin. As the days went by, the tension in the village continued to rise, fueled by Fariz's malicious accusations. Amin, once a respected figure in the community, now found himself isolated, the subject of cruel rumors and whispers. His name had been dragged through the mud, and no matter how hard he tried to explain, no one seemed to listen. The seeds of doubt had been firmly planted, and the village that had once embraced him now viewed him with suspicion. Amin's heart ached as he went about his daily chores, the weight of the villagers' scorn heavier than any physical labor he had ever endured. His work in the fields, once a source of pride, now felt like a futile attempt to regain the respect he had lost. He would wake early each morning, tending to his animals, but even the comfort of his routine could not erase the bitterness of betrayal. The worst part was the silence. No one spoke to him, and even his closest neighbors kept their distance. As for Rani, the dog who had always been his faithful companion, she too seemed to sense the change in the air. She no longer greeted him with her usual enthusiasm, but rather lingered near him, sensing his distress. It was as though the bond between them had been shattered, just like everything else in his life. Every bark, every glance from the dog reminded him of the chaos Fariz had caused, and a deep sadness washed over him. Zab, however, refused to give in to the rumors. Despite the overwhelming pressure and the growing distrust in the village, she remained by Amin's side. She would visit him every day, bringing him food and helping him with the farm. She could see the toll the accusations were taking on him. His once vibrant spirit now seemed dulled, as if a part of him had died inside. Still, she refused to let him face this nightmare alone. In the quiet of the evenings, when they would sit together under the mango tree, Zab would remind him of his strength, trying to offer him solace in the face of overwhelming adversity. But even Zab was feeling the strain. The villagers, once her friends, now avoided her. They whispered behind her back, calling her naive for supporting someone they believed to be guilty. It hurt her deeply, but she remained resolute in her belief that Amin was innocent. She knew in her heart that he could never do such a thing, and she would not let Fariz's lies tear them apart. One afternoon, after another difficult encounter with the villagers, Zab found herself sitting by the edge of the village, trying to gather her thoughts. She had been questioning everything. How could the village have turned so quickly against Amin? How could they so easily believe the lies spread by someone like Fariz, whose only intention was to destroy Amin's life? It was then that she decided she would not just stand by and watch as Fariz's lies destroyed the man she loved. She would find the truth, no matter what it took. Zab began her investigation by speaking with the few remaining villagers who hadn't completely turned against her. She went from house to house, asking if anyone had seen anything strange or heard anything unusual the night before the baby had been found. Most were too afraid to speak out, but eventually, she found a few who mentioned seeing Fariz acting strangely around the time the baby was discovered. Zab's heart raced as she pieced together the fragments of information. Fariz, it seemed, had been more involved in the events surrounding the baby than anyone had realized. His behavior had been suspicious, and his attempts to discredit Amin were not as innocent as they appeared. But Zab knew this wasn't enough. She needed concrete evidence to expose Fariz for what he truly was, a manipulator and a liar who was willing to do anything to ruin the lives of others. Her search led her to an elderly woman in the village, someone who had seen many things over the years and knew more than she let on. After some persuasion, the woman revealed something that sent chills down Zab's spine. "I saw Fariz with a woman not long before the baby was found," the woman said, her voice filled with uncertainty. She was pregnant, and he seemed worried. He told her to leave, to disappear, and never come back. She was alone when she left, and then soon after, the baby was found. Zab's mind began to race. Could it be? Was Fariz the one responsible for the baby's abandonment? Was he the one who had orchestrated the entire situation to frame Amin? Determined to find out more, Zab spent the next few days searching for the woman the old woman had mentioned. She finally tracked her down to a small secluded house on the outskirts of the village. The woman, a pale and anxious figure, answered the door hesitantly. When Zab introduced herself and mentioned Fariz's name, the woman's eyes widened in fear. "I don't want to be involved in this," she pleaded, her voice shaking. "Fariz will hurt me if he finds out I'm talking." But Zab reassured her gently. "I'm not here to hurt you. I want to help you, and I want to help Amin. Fariz is the one who is responsible for everything. I need you to tell me the truth." Reluctantly, the woman began to speak. She told Zab how she had been in a relationship with Fariz, and when she had become pregnant, Fariz had insisted that she get rid of the baby. "He didn't want anyone to know," she whispered. "He said it would ruin his reputation. So when I gave birth, I didn't know where to go. He told me to leave, and I had no choice but to disappear. I never saw him again." Zab felt a mixture of anger and disbelief. Fariz had not only abandoned this woman, but had also framed Amin by leaving the baby in his care. Her heart ached for the woman and for Amin, who had been wrongly accused. She had the truth now, but how could she prove it? How could she expose Fariz's lies to the entire village? With the woman's testimony in hand, Zab made a plan. She would confront Fariz and bring the truth to light. But she knew she couldn't do it alone. She needed to rally the support of the village and clear Amin's name once and for all. As the days grew longer, the tension in the village became unbearable for both Amin and Zab. Though Zab had uncovered the truth, she knew that exposing Fariz's lies would not be easy. The village, now consumed by doubt and suspicion, would be hard to sway. Fariz had already done too much damage, planting seeds of hatred and mistrust. But Zab was determined. She could no longer stand by and let the man she loved suffer. The Fez, confrontation with Fariz was inevitable, but Zab was careful in her approach. She knew that to reveal the truth, she would have to carefully construct her case and present it in such a way that even the most skeptical villagers would be forced to listen. But Fariz was cunning. She couldn't underestimate him. He would do everything. In his power to prevent the truth from coming out, one evening under the cover of darkness, Zab met with a few of the villagers who had shown a glimmer of support for Amin. These were people who had not yet fully believed Fariz's accusations, but had been swayed by the overwhelming consensus of the village. She spoke to them in hushed tones, explaining what she had learned about Fariz's role in the events surrounding the baby, the woman who had been abandoned, the lies, the manipulation. Zab laid out everything she had discovered, with the hope that these few would help her confront Fariz in front of the whole village. Meanwhile, Amin remained unaware of Zab's plans. He had been retreating further into himself, his once vibrant spirit now worn down by the constant whispers and stares. His trust in the villagers had all but evaporated, and he spent most of his time alone, often with Rani by his side, seeking solace in her company. Zab knew that she needed to act fast. The longer Fariz went unchallenged, the more damage he would do. She arranged for a public gathering the next day, calling together the villagers in the town square. The entire village had been invited, those who had sided with Fariz and those who still held out hope for Amin. Zab's plan was to reveal everything in front of them all, to expose Fariz for the manipulative liar he truly was. The morning of the gathering arrived, and the village square was filled with murmurs of anticipation. Villagers eyed each other with suspicion, some whispering about what might happen. Fariz, unaware of the trap being set for him, arrived as usual, his face plastered with the same smug confidence that had carried him through the previous days. He greeted the villagers, acting as though he were the hero who had protected them, all from an evil man. Amin Zab stood quietly at the back of the crowd, her heart pounding in her chest. She had gathered the evidence she needed, but now it was up to her to present it in a way that would shake the village to its core. The gathering began with the usual chatter. The elders spoke briefly, and then Zab stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise. "I have something to say," she declared, her tone firm but controlled. "Something the whole village needs to hear. It is time the truth came to light. The crowd fell silent. Every eye turned toward her, some filled with curiosity, others with doubt. I know that many of you have believed Fariz's accusations against Amin, she continued, her gaze steady and unwavering. But I ask you to listen, truly listen, to what I am about to reveal. Fariz has lied to you all. He is not the hero he claims to be. A murmur ran through the crowd. Fariz's face hardened and his eyes narrowed. He stepped forward, but Zab raised a hand, silencing him. Fariz has been hiding something, she went on, her voice growing stronger with each word. He has manipulated you all, fed you lies and used his position to turn the village against an innocent man. But I have found the truth, and now I will expose it. With a sudden motion, Zab pulled from her bag a bundle of letters and papers she had gathered over the past few days. Testimonies, the woman's account, and the proof of Fariz's involvement in the baby's abandonment. This, she said, is the evidence. Fariz was involved with a woman in this village. When she became pregnant, he abandoned her. He told her to leave, to disappear. And when the baby was found, he knew exactly what he was doing. The villagers looked at each other, confusion and shock written on their faces. Some were starting to doubt Fariz's story, but he refused to back down. You have no proof, he sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. These are lies, nothing but lies. She is just another woman trying to tear me down. You can't believe her. But Zab was undeterred. I have the truth, and I have witnesses who will confirm everything. You cannot hide from what you have done. Fariz. She called the elderly woman to the front, the one who had spoken to her about Fariz's actions. The woman, trembling but determined, stepped forward and spoke. I saw him with her. I saw him tell her to leave. I saw everything. And I know what he did to Amin. He is the one who should be ashamed. The silence in the square was deafening. Fariz stood frozen, his face pale as the realization of his impending downfall began to sink in. He had underestimated Zab, and now the villagers were beginning to see him for what he truly was. One by one, others stepped forward, offering their testimonies. Some had seen Fariz act suspiciously the night the baby had been found. Others recalled his strange behavior in the days before the baby's abandonment. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and with each new revelation, Fariz's mask of innocence slipped further. Finally, the head elder, an influential figure in the village, spoke. It seems, Fariz, that you have much to answer for, he said gravely. The evidence is clear. You have deceived this village, and for that, you will face the consequences. The crowd, once so firmly against Amin, now began to murmur among themselves, their voices filled with shame and regret. They had been manipulated by Fariz's lies, and now they saw the truth. Fariz, realizing his defeat, turned and fled the scene, disappearing into the hills beyond the village. The villagers were left in stunned silence, trying to process the enormity of what had just transpired. Zab, her heart racing but filled with relief, turned to Amin, who had quietly watched the whole scene from the edge of the crowd. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the weight of all the pain, all the suffering seemed to lift. He had been vindicated, and the truth had finally come to light. Though the village would take time to heal from the damage Fariz had caused, there was hope now. Hope that justice had been served and that the love between Zab and Amin, forged through trial and adversity, would endure. The days following the dramatic revelation were filled with both sorrow and hope. The villagers, once divided and consumed by mistrust, now faced the aftermath of their actions. Some of them had realized the error of their ways and sought to make amends, while others still grappled with the shame of having been so easily manipulated by Fariz. The village was not the same. It had been forever changed by the truth and by Zab's bravery. For Amin, the weight of the village's accusations had lifted, but the scars remained. The trust he had once had in the people around him had been shattered, and though he could now walk freely without fear of further persecution, there was still a deep sense of loss. He had been wronged in a way that would be hard to forgive, and the damage that Faris had caused would take time to heal. Yet, amidst all the pain, there was a glimmer of hope. With Zab by his side, the road to recovery didn't seem as daunting. Zab, ever the pillar of strength, refused to let the wounds of the past define her. While the village slowly began to heal, she focused on helping Amin rebuild his life. She knew that the battle was not just about exposing Faris. It was about helping Amin regain the life he had once known, and to offer him the love and support he so desperately needed. They began to take small steps toward normalcy. Amin, with Zab's encouragement, started working with the villagers once again. It was not easy, as many of them were still too ashamed to look him in the eye. But little by little, a few extended olive branches. Some apologized for their role in spreading the rumors, and others, though reluctant, made efforts to accept him back into the fold. One morning, as the sun cast its warm rays across the village, Zab and Amin took a walk together near the edge of the forest. The air was crisp, and the world seemed to be waking up from the dark spell that had hung over them for so long. It was on this walk that Amin finally spoke of his pain, of the long months of isolation, the gnawing feeling of betrayal, and the deep hurt that had consumed him. Zab listened patiently, her heart aching for him, but she didn't just listen. She held his hand, a silent promise that she would always be there. "I was so lost in the beginning," Amin said softly, his voice cracking. "I didn't know who to trust, and I didn't know how to keep going when everyone around me turned their back. It was like I was walking through a fog, never knowing if I would ever find the light again." Zab squeezed his hand, her voice steady. "The light was always there, Amin. It was just waiting for you to find it. And you did. You never gave up, even when it seemed like everything was against you." Amin stopped walking and turned to face her. "I don't know what I would have done without you, Zab. You saved me. From myself, from the darkness. You were the light I couldn't see." Tears welled up in Zab's eyes, but she smiled. "And I will always be with you. We'll get through this together." As they continued their walk, the world seemed to bloom anew. The past could not be erased, but it no longer held the same power over them. What had once seemed like a prison of doubt and fear now felt like a distant memory, and before them lay a future, one they would face side by side. Meanwhile, Faris had not been seen since his flight from the village. No one knew where he had gone, but the general consensus was that he had fled to escape the consequences of his actions. The village had long since stopped looking for him, choosing instead to focus on rebuilding what had been broken. However, the village council had decided that it would be necessary to take formal action against Faris. A meeting was held in which they discussed the severity of his manipulation, the harm he had caused, and the damage he had done to the community's trust. It was determined that he would be banned from returning, his name forever tarnished in the eyes of the villagers. Though those who had once believed in him now saw him for what he was, a man who had manipulated the hearts of the innocent for his own gain. This decision did not bring much satisfaction to Amin. There was no joy in seeing Faris defeated. The wounds he had inflicted could not be healed by banishment. Faris's departure did not undo the damage, nor did it restore the lost time, but it was a small victory for justice, a step toward repairing the broken trust in the village. As time passed, Amin and Zab found comfort in each other's presence. Their bond had only deepened through the trials they had faced. The love they shared was quiet, but steadfast. A love built not on idealized fantasies, but on the raw and real understanding of each other's pain and strength. Amin slowly rebuilt his life, this time with a newfound appreciation for the simple joys. He began working with the villagers again, not just for himself, but to help them reclaim what they had lost: faith in each other and in the village's future. Zab stood beside him every step of the way, her support unwavering, a constant reminder that together they could overcome anything. And so the village healed. It was not a quick or easy process, but with each passing day, the scars began to fade. The villagers learned to forgive, and some found redemption in their efforts to right their wrongs. As for Zab and Amin, they found a peace they had never thought possible. A peace that came not from the absence of pain, but from the resilience to face it together. In the end, it wasn't the exposure of Fariza's lies that defined their journey. It was the love that had endured despite the lies, the courage to confront the darkness, and the strength to rebuild what had been broken. Through all the trials, they had found something far more lasting than justice. They had found each other, and, in that, they found a new beginning. So, friends, that's all for today's video. If you like this story, be sure to like it and subscribe to our channel if you're new. So, I'm saying goodbye today. See you in the next new video. Until then, stay well and healthy. Allah Hafiz.